Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. So in this video what we will try to do is we will try to understand the difference between values and distinct function in DAX in Power BI. So what I have here is I have a simple data model where I have just two tables. One is product table which acts as a dimension table which has got just four products 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then I have orders which is kind of fact table where you have this data. Okay, so it's a very simple table. If I show you the data model, both these tables are connected using product ID because that is the common column between both these tables. Okay, now what we will try to do is we will try to understand the difference between values and distinct under different scenarios. So what we will try to do first is I'll come here, I'll try to create two measures in the products table. For example, I say new measure, count of products using distinct okay, so this is the measure which is using distinct function, and then I'll try to create another measure which is using values function. So I'll just copy this formula. Here I will try to use values. Okay, now what I will try to do is I'll show these measures in a KPI. So the first measure I'll select a distinct, and then I will insert another KPI where I will show values. So although these measures at this point they are showing the same number, okay, so the only difference here is in one measure we have used distinct and in the other measure we have used values. So until this point there is no issue, both these measures are showing the correct value as expected. So as we all know that both these functions, what they do is values and distinct, so they try to get the distinct values from the column that is passed as an argument. So in this case we are passing product ID as an argument, so it is going to retrieve all the distinct values from the products table from the product ID column, and it is going to show you the count of the number of product IDs that we have in the products table. Okay, so far everything is good. Now let's try to understand a scenario where both these functions give a different result. So to generate the scenario, what I will try to do is I will go to my data. So I open up the Power Query, and then from the products table I will try to delete one record. For example, I'll try to delete the product ID 4 from here. So let's say remove bottom rows. So I will select just one row from the bottom. Okay, now we don't see product ID 4 in our products table. I will say click on close and apply. Okay, now you see that both these measures are showing a different value. Okay, now let's try to understand why this is the case. Why distinct is showing as 3 but values is giving a value of 4. So the result of this function values is unchanged, but the value of distinct function has changed. So what happens is if you look at the data, okay, so the orders table is still the same, but when you look at the products table we don't have a product ID 4. Okay, but when you look at the orders table we see that product ID 4 still has some orders here. Okay, so which means that although we are joining the two tables using product ID, this particular product which is ID 4 will not have a match in our product table. Okay, which means that this particular record in the orders table we can call it as an orphaned row, which means that it doesn't have any relation with the products table. Okay, so in this case what Power BI does in the background is it tries to add an empty row in the products table for all the orphaned rows in the fact table. So imagine you had another product here, suppose 5, with some value for quantity sold. Okay, even in that case also, if you don't have product ID 5 in the products table, so even that row is considered as a orphaned row. So for whatever rows there is no match in the products table, Power BI tries to add a blank row at the end. So if I come here, okay, although you don't see that here, but Power BI does it in the background by adding a blank row. So the blank row exists here, although we don't see it. Okay, now what happens in the formula is the only difference between values and distinct is that values will also consider blank as a distinct value, whereas distinct will ignore the blank rows. So, by this definition, values will still consider the empty blank row which was inserted in the products table due to the rows which doesn't have a match. Okay, and then whereas distinct, although there is an empty row in the products table, distinct is going to ignore that and it will only show the rows which are non-blank. I hope you understand why you see there is a difference between distinct and values. So it is important to understand why both these functions give a different result. So the conclusion here is that as long as you have a proper relationship between the dimension table and fact table, then there will not be any difference in the output of these two functions. So the difference happens only when you have some rows in your fact table which doesn't find a match in the dimension table. That is when you see a difference in the output of both these functions. I hope you understand this clearly. Thank you so much for watching the video.